Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's June 17th, 2025 in New Govardhan, Australia, and we're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23. I'm going to read text 40 and 41. And we have 40 up on the board. Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpabhadrake Manase Chaitra Ratyecha Sareme Ramaya Ratha. Vaishrambake, in the Vaishrambaka garden. Surasane, in Surasana. Nandane, in Nandana. Pushpabhadrake, in Pushpabhadraka. Manase, by the Manasa Sarovara lake. Chaitra Ratye, in Chaitra Ratya. Cha, and Saha, he, Rame, enjoyed. Ramaya, by his wife. Rataha, satisfied. This is about Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Srila Prabhupada's translation, satisfied by his wife, he enjoyed in that aerial mansion not only on Mount Meru, but in different gardens known as Vaishrambaka, Surasana, Nandana, Pushbhadraka, and Chaitraratya, and by the Manasa Sarovara lake. Text 41. Brajishnuna vimasnena kamagena mahiyasa Vaimanikyam atyaseta chara lokanyatanila. By the way, this particular letter, Sanskrit letter, charal lokan, is very rarely seen. It's a real letter, but you don't see it very much. Srila Prabhupada's translation. He traveled in that way through the various planets as the air passes uncontrolled in every direction. Coursing through the air in that great and splendid aerial mansion, which could fly at his will, he surpassed even the demigods. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The planets occupied by the demigods are restricted to their own orbits, but Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could travel all over the different directions of the universe without restriction. The living entities who are within the universe are called conditioned souls. That is, they are not free to move everywhere. We are inhabitants of this earthly globe. We cannot move freely to other planets. In the modern age, man is trying to go to other planets, but so far he has been unsuccessful. It is not possible to travel to any other planets because by the laws of nature, even the demigods cannot move from one planet to another. But Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could surpass the strength of the demigods and travel in space in all directions. The comparison here is very suitable. The words yata anilaha indicate that as the air is free to move anywhere without restriction, so Kardama Muni unrestrictedly traveled in all directions of the universe. Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpabhadrake Manase Chaitraratyecha Sareme Ramayarataha Bragnisnuna Vimanena Kamagena Mahiyasa Vaimanikam Atyaseta Charalokam Yatanila. Satisfied by his wife, he enjoyed in that aerial mansion, not only on Mount Meru, but in different gardens known as Vaishrambaka, Surasana, Nandana, Pushpabhadraka, and Chaitraratya, and by the Manasa Sarovar, a lake. He traveled in that way through the various planets as the air passes uncontrolled in every direction. Coursing through the air in that great and splendid aerial mansion, which could fly at his will, he surpassed even the demigods. So, my hand's broken. I broke it on a chair when my pinky went all the way back, and that's why it's in a cast. So, in case you're curious, I'll try not to distract you much with my alien hand. Okay. So it was in 1978 in New York City, and at that time we would have regular visits by all the 11 zonal acharyas. And I remember Tamal Krishna Raj was visiting. He became eventually our local GBC. So he gave a very nice class, and at the end of his class, there was one young man who was visiting the temple maybe first or second time. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj spent about 45 minutes just interacting with him, and most of us stayed, so that means we were staying till like 10 o'clock and missing breakfast. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was trying to convince this young man to move into the temple. And he said, well, what else do you want to do? What are your objections to moving in? And so the young man, this was in New York, and so the young man said, well, I want to travel. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, well, where have you traveled in the last year? And he said, to New Jersey, which is the adjacent state. It's like if you ask someone here, where do you want to travel to? And they said, oh, Brisbane. I've traveled to Brisbane. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, let me tell you where I've traveled to in the last year. And, he listed all these international places. So this is a very strong desire of the living entity to have freedom, to be able to go where we want, when we want. One major difference between democratic societies and communist societies is the communist societies will often restrict where you go and what you can do, correct? Yes? You'll notice in the communist societies, people are trying to get out, not get in. Like North Korea doesn't have a huge problem with undocumented immigrants. Because people don't want to go to a restrictive place. Yeah? We want to be unrestricted. We want to be able to do what we want to do, when we want to do it, and go where we want to go, where we want to go. And those who the Lord fully trusts, those who are fully trusted in service, they can do that. The more trust you have, the more freedom you have. This is true in ordinary dealings as well, isn't it? When you really trust someone, then you have available, they can stay in your house, they can go any place that they want in your house. Maybe you'll even lend them the keys to your car, they can go anywhere around the yard. And someone who you don't trust, you don't even let into your yard. You certainly don't let into your house. So, and then there's all kinds of things in between that. And in a business, right? When you really trust somebody, then they can access the accounts, they can access the company car, they can use the company credit card to take a flight. And if they're not very trusted, then they're just restricted to their one little area of work. So those who are rebellious, they're restricted. And therefore, the more we earn the Lord's trust, the more He can trust us, the more freedom that we have. So I wanted to first look at the fact that those who are fully trusted by the Lord, they can go wherever they want. And I thought I'd read some verses from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that really strike me in this regard. So the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is written by Srila Sanatana Goswami, and he wrote it as a narrative, he wrote it as a story, and every once in a while he would make philosophical comments on the story. It might seem odd that someone's commenting on their own work, but if you think of it like footnotes in a book, then it can make a little bit more sense. So it's like he's telling this story, and then he's periodically footnoting it to explain philosophically what's going on. So we're looking at Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 2.3. We're going to start with text 92. So we're going to go through a few verses here. So this is where Gopakumar, our main protagonist in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, has gotten beyond the universe. He's gone beyond the material universe, and he's in the presence of Lord Shiva, who exists beyond the Brahma Jyoti. And Lord Shiva's devotees are thinking that Lord Shiva is supreme. And then they see some Vishnu Dutas coming from Vaikuntha. And Gopakumar is saying, who are these people? Where are they coming from? And Lord Shiva tells his son Ganesh, talk to Gopakumar off to the side, because my devotees, Lord Shiva is saying, my devotees think that I'm supreme. They don't know that there's Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha, and they don't want to be disturbed by that, which I found interesting in and of itself. So Ganesh is talking to Gopakumar. This is what he says. These persons cherish only devotional service to the Lord. They travel as they please, spreading pure devotion everywhere. They save the Lord's devotees from all fears, even at the time of death. If those devotees have but once had even a reflection of the Lord's name on the tip of their tongue or the path to their ears. So that's also a very interesting point, that if even once you've had a reflection of the Lord's name, a nam abbas, a reflection or a shadow of the Lord's name that you have spoken or heard, then these Vishnu Dutas will come to help you when you leave your body. So that's reassuring, yes? But the main point here is that they could go wherever they please. So Srila Sanatana Goswami further explains this. He says, here Sri Ganesh explains why the messengers of Vaikuntha visit all the universes. Because what Gopakumar is seeing is these residents of Vaikuntha leaving the spiritual world. Right? Again, if you can kind of picture this in your mind, Gopakumar and Lord Shiva and Ganesh, they're outside the material universe, they're in the Brahma Jyoti, and they're seeing these Vishnu Dutas come out of Vaikuntha and going into all these varieties of the material universe. So why are they doing this? Why the messengers of Vaikuntha visit all the universes? Acting on their own initiative. Acting on their own initiative. They travel everywhere to spread devotional service to the Supreme Lord, eager to distribute fearlessness to the Lord's devotees. Even though Vaishnavas have nothing to fear from anything material, they still fear obstructions to their bhakti. The Vaikuntha-vasis always endeavor to help Vaishnavas everywhere overcome impediments to their devotional service. They protect anyone who has at least once chanted or heard the holy name of Lord Vishnu, or even a shadow of his name uttered neglectfully or in jest, contempt, or pain. So that's very reassuring. Like right when I broke my hand, it was so painful, I started jumping around the room going, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So I guess that counts according to Srila Sanatana Goswami. So the point here is that the residents of Vaikuntha can go wherever they want on their own initiative. We have later on in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam where Gopakumar is asked by Srimati Radharani, please go back down to the universe that you came from, go to Vrindavan there, and please help one devotee there, become a guru to one devotee there. So that was a request by Srimati Radharani. But here we see that the residents of Vaikuntha can also take their own initiative. They can say, let's go down to the material world and give fearlessness to devotees. Just like sometimes we might say, hey, you want to go out on Harinam? Let's just go on Harinam. Maybe nobody asked you. You might have one of the temple authorities say, hey, I'd like you to go on Harinam. Or you might say, hey, I want to go. Where I stay in America, there's one devotee who loves to distribute prasadam. So after everyone has taken prasadam, whenever anything's left, he packs it up and he takes it various places. Takes it to shops and various businesses that he knows and gives it to people. Sometimes he'll give it to animals. And he does this on his own initiative. So the residents of Vaikuntha, they can go anywhere. They can go anywhere in the Vaikunthas, and they can go anywhere in the material world. Now, not only can the pure devotees in the spiritual world go anywhere, they can also take any form that they like. So they have freedom to go anywhere and to be anything. So we also have this kind of desire, isn't it? I mean, we mostly try to fulfill this desire in how we dress. So we might like to dress in different ways. Well, now I'm going to wear this kind of clothing. Now I'm going to wear this kind of clothing. But we also may do it with our form. We might dye our hair different colors, or style our hair in different ways, or put on different kinds of cosmetics. And nowadays, of course, you can go to doctors and have them cut you up in various ways so you can get a different nose. And of course, you're not going to do that every week. But you can also change your form through surgery. Or people try to change their form through exercise. You know, one devotee posted a picture of himself with big muscles, and he said, I now have muscles on my muscles, and it's become very uncomfortable. So we can try to change our form through diet, through exercise, in so many different ways. But we're restricted how much we can change our form, isn't it? I mean, modern medical science now tells people, well, we can change your gender, but they can't really do it. They can't actually change a person's reproductive function, which is, of course, the essence of sexual, biological sex. But this concept that we're going to change our form. Yeah, so here we're going again to Śrīmad Bhagavatam. This is from a little later on. This is when Gopakumar actually goes to Vaikuntha, and he's seeing the residents there. So this is from Śrīmad Bhagavatam to 2.4, 140 to 146. Sri Narada said, don't think that the flocks of animals and birds of this place, or the trees, creepers, bushes, grass, and other vegetation are made from earth, like ordinary creatures in the mode of ignorance. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains, in Vaikuntha, Gopakumar saw many animals, like cows, horses, and elephants, birds like doves and cuckoos, trees, bushes, and creepers like mandaras and kundas, and seemingly inauspicious creatures, like insects and worms. He would have been wrong to think that these were inferior living beings born into bodies covered by the mode of ignorance. They were not degraded like the living beings of the material world that assume bodies made of the element earth. The next verse. In fact, this is Narada continuing to speak, in fact, these are all personal associates of Sri Krishna, all with spiritual Satchidananda bodies. They have assumed such forms to taste the ecstasy of serving the Lord in various ways. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains, these Vaikuntha-vasis choose to play the roles such as animals and birds to increase the variety of Lord Narayana's pleasure, and they also want to share in that pleasure. Thus the birds, bees, trees, and creepers described by Lord Brahma in the 3rd canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, where he tells of his own experience of Vaikuntha, are not ignorant creatures like the corresponding species of life in the material world. Now this is also very interesting. Narada Muni is continuing. They have assumed forms with colors and shapes similar to those of the Lord they have worshipped as most dear. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains, this verse indicates that Vaikuntha devotees who appear in non-human forms, such as those of some animal or plant, have worshipped similar forms of Narayana, who by his expansion appears in the same species. So those who are worshiping the Lord in his form as a fish, they may in Vaikuntha themselves take the form of a fish, so that they can sport with the Lord in the same form. These devotees, Sanatana Goswami continuing, these devotees, each in his own way, have realized the perfection of Swarupya, having attained forms that look like those of the Supreme Lord. And because the Lord has an infinite number of forms, as much as the waves of the ocean or the waves of the river, so then they can also have these forms. Srila Sanatana Goswami going on to explain, having each attained sameness with a particular form of the Lord, they have gained the opulences of various kinds of bodies, as sages, demigods, fish, tortoises, human beings, and mystic seers. Narada Muni continuing, those have become hogs, man-lions. So somebody who's really worshiping Lord Nrsingadev, they can take in a Singadev type form. Or dwarves. And some have 3 eyes, 4 arms, or thousands of eyes, like the Mahapurush. Some have assumed bodies with thousands of faces, or with features like such deities as the gods of air and fire. Some have 4 arms, or 8, or 12, or more, and various kinds of dress, ornaments, symbols, and other attributes. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains, whoever comes to Vaikuntha realizes the very same service to the lotus feet of Krishna for which he had developed a taste by the end of his material life. And he realizes that service in full detail with its dress, form, and so on, for each mood of devotion is dear to the personality of Godhead, and each give pleasure to the devotees absorbed in it. Now, we also know that the pure devotees can have simultaneously many different forms and be simultaneously in many different places. Just like we know in Chaitanya Lila, there are devotees of Lord Chaitanya who are there in Dasi Ras, serving Lord Chaitanya, but they also exist in Krishna's pastimes, in Sakya Ras, as cowherd boys, or in Madhurya Ras, as gopis, and some of them also exist in Ram Lila as monkeys. So they're simultaneously in 3 Leelas, and you could be simultaneously in many Leelas. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that those of us worshiping the Lord in Mahaprabhu's movement, we might have an eternal form in Mahaprabhu's Leela, we might have an eternal form in Krishna's Leela, or in both. And also in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, when Gopakumar says to Narada, I seem to see you everywhere. How is that? And I see some devotees also in more than one place. And Narada says, we're expanding. Like the Pandavas exist in the heavenly planets, and they also exist in the spiritual world. Arjuna is existing in one form with Naranarayan Rishi, and another form with Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Prabhupada writes in several places how the liberated soul can expand themselves. Now, we can't expand ourselves like Krishna to be in every atom. We're not going to have unlimited expansions. I don't know what the limit is, but I think it's a pretty high number. So the liberated souls can travel wherever they want and be whatever they want, and be simultaneously present in many places, doing different things at the same time in different forms. Now, one of my favorite purports from Srila Prabhupada about the freedom of the pure devotees, I wanted to also read this. This is from Bhagavatam 1.637, and this also has to do with Narada. Thus addressing Vyasadeva, Srila Narada Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will. So we have this same concept that we find in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where the Vaikuntha residents are traveling at their own initiative. So Srila Prabhupada's purport. Every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. So that's a very important statement. We have strong evidence for the fact that we are not meant to be part of this material world. That this is not our original position. One of them is our desire for freedom. We have very limited freedom in this world, correct? I mean, really, really, really limited freedom, which we'll talk about in a moment, how limited our freedom is. But why do we want total freedom? If we were really material beings, and this was actually our home, we would not want something that is unattainable here. Does that make logical sense to everybody? Like there are creatures that don't drink water. They never drink water. They get their water through other means, maybe by eating food that has a high liquid content. So they don't feel a need to drink water. It's not in their nature. But if we go to a very hot, dry place, we'll think, I want to drink water. Because that's not where we belong. Or if we're put underwater, we'll think, I can't breathe. I want to breathe air, because we're in the wrong place. The aquatic creatures, the fish that are living, they're not thinking, I need to be out in the air to breathe air. So if this was our home, we wouldn't be thinking, I want full freedom. It wouldn't even occur to us. So he says that's our transcendental nature. I'm going to read this again. Every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. When we look at universal desires, desires that are common to all, at least human beings, that we can ask. But even we see the animals. Do animals like to be restricted? Do they like to be tied up or put in a cage? Every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. And this freedom is obtained only through the transcendental service of the Lord. And again, that's a question of trust. Illusioned by the external energy, everyone thinks that he is free, but actually he is bound by the laws of nature. A conditioned soul cannot freely move from one place to another, even on this earth, and what to speak of moving from one planet to another, which is also what Prabhupada talked about in today's purport, how we're trying to go to other planets. So I remember when I was 6, that was, I think, the first manned orbital flight around the earth. And we were told, oh, by the time that people, in 20 years from now, so by the time I'd be like 26, we would have colonies on the moon. Well, in case you didn't notice, I passed the 26-year mark quite some time ago. Some people say to me, Urmila, you haven't changed. And I'm like, I must have been a really ugly 20-year-old. So my 26th year has long come and gone. And there's no colonies on the moon, are there? However much they talk about going to the moon, wherever they've gone, and whether they've gone there or not, which is who cares, really? Even if we went there, what did we do? Brought back some rocks and some dust? We haven't been able, we have science fiction books and movies. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to watch Star Trek, going where no one has gone before, and to all. But that hasn't, again, when I watched that when I was a kid, I thought, well, certainly by the time I'm like 30 or 40, I'll be able to hitch a ride on the Enterprise, go to other planets and meet aliens. And it hasn't happened. We're restricted. But a full-fledged free soul, like going on with the purport, but a full-fledged free soul, full-fledged free soul like Narada, always engaged in chanting the Lord's glory, is free to move not only on earth, but also in any part of the universe, as well as in any part of the spiritual sky. We can just imagine the extent and unlimitedness of his freedom, which is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. There is no reason or obligation for his traveling. No reason or obligation. I want to go there. He can just go there. He doesn't have to have a reason. And no one can stop his free movement. Similarly, the transcendental system of devotional service is also free. Now, this is a little scary. It may or may not develop in a particular person even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas. This is not a mechanical process. It's about a personal relationship between the soul and God. Similarly, the association of the devotee is also free. One may be fortunate to have it, or one may not have it even after thousands of endeavors. Therefore, in all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. That one sentence we could probably speak about for a long time. Without freedom, there is no execution of devotional service. So that's a side point to what I want to talk about today. But the point is that if there's force involved, there's no devotional service. If there's force involved, there's no devotional service. By the way, charity given under obligation, under a sense of obligation, is in which of the three modes? Passion. And you don't get the full result of such charity. And charity isn't just giving money. Charity is also giving time, endeavor. If we're doing things under force or a sense of obligation, it's in Rajagun. It's certainly not transcendental. The freedom surrendered to the Lord does not mean that the devotee becomes dependent in every respect. So that's kind of the crux of what we're afraid of, isn't it? If I surrender to the Lord, I'll just become like a robot. I'll just become fully dependent. To surrender unto the Lord through the transparent medium of the spiritual master is to attain complete freedom in life. So those who are fully trusted by the Lord, they have full freedom. They have full freedom of movement. They have full freedom of desire. They have full freedom of form. They're not obligated. They don't have to have any reason. They can go wherever they want and do whatever they want, because whatever they want and whatever they want to be is fully in line with the service of the Lord. Like, again, if you have some guest in your house and you give them full freedom to do anything in your house, that means you're convinced that whatever they want to do is going to be in harmony with you. We usually have this kind of trust for family members. Like generally, hopefully, in like a marriage, there's not like some drawer in the cabinet where the wife says, no, you can't go in that drawer. So generally, between the husband and wife, they can go anywhere in the house, look at anything in the house, they can access anything, they can access the bank accounts, they can access the car, anything of the other person, because there's trust. So when the Lord fully trusts us, when we're fully aligned with Him, then we have full freedom. And it's not that in a normal, healthy marriage, the one spouse has to check with the other all the time about every little detail of everything. There's a trust that there's a oneness, as Prabhupada would say, of interest. That you have the same interest, you're not going to harm the other person. Which is why when there's a betrayal in these kind of relationships, it's so devastating. If you find out that your spouse has been, secretly siphoning off your money to gamble and bankrupting you, it's so devastating because you trusted this person with everything. So we have violated the Lord's trust. We have desired, and we are desiring. This is an active thing. It's not just something that happened, millions of years ago, and we don't even remember what it was. But we actively desire to take the Lord's opulence and the Lord's potencies and use them for ourselves. So therefore, we're very restricted. So there's this lecture Prabhupada gave in 1969 in Los Angeles. He says, everything belongs to God, just like everything belongs to the government, either in the prison house or outside the prison house. Just like in the prison house, you cannot change your cell from this cell to another cell. And in free life, you can go from this home to that home. In prison life, you cannot do that. You must stay in your cell. So these planets are like a cell. We are trying to go to the moon planet. That is not possible, not in this way. That way is different. I've explained many times in this meeting, because we are given a particular cell. Either we are Americans or Indians or Chinese or Russian, we have been given this planet, live. You cannot leave it by your will. Although there are millions and billions of planets, and although you've got machine to fly, but because we are conditioned, checked by the laws of nature or God, you cannot go exactly like the man who's put into a prison cell. He cannot change at his will without superior authority. Prabhupada would often give the example that he says, I have to get a visa. Like before I could come to Australia, I had to get an Australian visa. I mean, it was a very simple thing. Mostly they just wanted some money from me. But still, I had to have that, or I couldn't enter. I have to have a passport. And if I had a criminal record, they wouldn't let me in, most likely. I can't just say, well, I want to just force my way into your country. We're restricted. We're restricted by oceans. We're restricted by mountains that we can't cross. We're not free. We're restricted in our form. There's only so much that I can change this body that I have. Right? I can put paint on it, and I can put paint on my hair and paint on my face, and I can have clothes that squeeze me in some places or pad me in other places, and I can even have somebody cut me up, but there's a limit, right? And I can't change into a dolphin form or in this body. I'm restricted. No? So even going from one life to another, I'm not fully free. Prabhupada would always say under daiva, under supervision. So I have certain desires, right? Yam yam vapi sram bhavam. I have certain desires at the time of death. I act in a certain way. But still, it's the superior authority that says, okay, this is this soul's karma, this is this soul's desire, that's where I'm going to go. And I can't object. Because, but I don't want to have that body. I don't want it. That they're going to say, sorry, that's what you wanted, that's what you ordered, that's how you behave, that's what you're going to get. You're going to have to wait until your end of that life before you can change to something else. And I can't fly if I want to. I'm sure we've all had dreams about flying. But, I can't. It doesn't matter how much I flap my arms. We're very, very restricted. When we have to wait until that particular sentence is over, till that particular karma runs out, before we can then get another chance, and then we have another set of restrictions. So maybe in another life I can fly, but then maybe I can't live in the water, or I can live in the water and I can't live on the land. I'm restricted in all these different ways. And if we're honest, we'd have to admit that we are very restricted. I can make choices, but choices within a parameter. So I was explaining an analogy to someone the other day, just like if you buy a ticket, like I bought a ticket to go from London to Delhi, Delhi to Melbourne. And once I'm on that flight from London to Delhi, I can't jump out the window. I can't say, oh, now I want to go on a different plane. Once I get to Delhi, then I can switch to another flight. But while I'm on the plane, my choices are restricted. They're restricted to how I deal with the staff, how I deal with the other passengers, whether what I watch on their entertainment screen, whether I watch anything at all, whether I sleep, whether I read a book, whether I'm chanting, whether I'm eating. I can make those choices within this little space. Yes. So my dear friends, that means we're not very trusted. That means we're not very reliable. Now there's degrees. So the more that Krishna trusts you, the more freedom you have. Like we human beings have more freedom than animals do. An animal has to eat according to their body. If you give some, grass to a carnivorous animal, they're not going to be interested in that. Give them spinach or something. Like cats, if cats don't eat meat, they'll get sick and die. You can't put a cat on a vegetarian diet, for example. And then if you take a creature that's naturally vegetarian and you feed them meat, then they'll get sick. They have to eat according to their particular body. But we can choose. We can say, well, I'm going to eat whatever I want. We have more freedom. We can choose to live in various climates, whereas animals are they're suited for a particular climate. You take them out of that climate, it's very difficult for them. So we have definitely more freedom than the animals. We have more freedom to think. We have more freedom to behave. We have the ability to control our bodily urges. We can say, I'm going to be celibate, or I'm going to fast. We can say, we can't, of course, choose to fast eternally or we'll die. But we can say, I'm going to fast from food, I'm going to fast from water. We have that kind of freedom. And the demigods have a higher freedom. Prabhupada talked about in today's purports how the demigods can't go everywhere, but they can go to more places than we can. The demigods can certainly go to planets that are lower than theirs. Yes, we know that the demigods can come to Earth. There's so many examples in the Shastra of the demigods coming to Earth. And Prabhupada said they don't generally come to Earth now because we're not doing yagyas, so they have no reason to come. Like, why would I come there? And we also know the demigods can change their form. So in Bhagavatam 8:15-32, so Bali Maharaj was conquering the heavenly planet, and Sukadeva Goswami says the demigods, advised by Brihaspati for their benefit, accepted his words. So Brihaspati had told them, you're not going to win now. No, don't bother fighting, you're not going to win. So assuming forms according to their desire, they left the heavenly kingdom and scattered without being observed by the demons. And Prabhupada writes, the word kama rupinaha indicates that the demigods, the inhabitants of the heavenly planets, can assume any form they desire. Thus, it was not at all difficult for them to remain incognito before the eyes of the demons. So even the demigods, they can travel to a range of planets that we cannot go to. They can change their forms that we cannot do. So again, we have this kind of degrees of freedom. So if we want full freedom, if we want the full freedom of Vaikuntha, then we have to obtain the full trust of the Lord. That's kind of what it comes down to. We're not going to gain full freedom just by changing our political system. Even though we're in a democracy, we still don't have the full freedom we desire. We're not going to have full freedom just by changing our bodily form as much as we can in this life. We're not going to have full freedom just by having universities where we have dozens of different degrees that we could study and hundreds of thousands of careers that we could do. We're still going to be restricted. We might imagine, well, now I'm free, but that's not going to be that. We have to get the mercy of the Lord. We have to win the trust of the Lord. And as Prabhupada says in that purport in the first canto, even if you follow all the formulas, if you're not trustworthy, the Lord's not going to give you that freedom. It's not just mechanical. You can't just go to Krishna and say, okay, I waved so many sticks of incense, I distributed so many books, I chanted so many mantras, give me my freedom. In fact, that very mentality is the antithesis of what we're trying to develop in Bhakti Yoga. Yeah? So we can think about, during the day, during what I'm doing during the day, am I showing the Lord that I'm trustworthy? I remember when I first went to New Zealand in 2007. So I went there to develop a curriculum, to develop a literacy program, the Learn to Read literacy program. And it was only in Auckland, it was the only place that said, okay, we'll just have you stay here, we'll give you a place to stay, and prasadam, and no local service obligations at all. You can just work on international curriculum. So that's very unusual. I mean, I was just hearing this morning how Bhanu Swami stayed here for a year just translating. Right? But that's very unusual. So most Hare Krishna temples won't give or don't have that facility to give something like that. You know, if you go to most temples and say, well, I would just like to do a one-year analysis of Srila Rupa Goswami's poetry. Most temples will say, sorry, you know, you have to go on the altar and you have to scrub the pots. Right? You can't just sit and analyze poetry. But because I already was good friends with Prana Prabhu, and he was very good friends with Kalasamvara, so Prana Prabhu was able to convince Kalasamvara and give her a little, they call them units, give her a unit to stay in and just let her work on curriculum. So I had not really written curriculum before. I had taught, but I hadn't so much created that many educational resources. So I had a lot of anxiety as to whether or not I was really going to be able to do this. And I had already gotten training in London at the Institute of Education, which is the main government's body of education. They had already given me some training. I already had some templates. And there was one devotee there, Dwarkapuri, who was a literacy expert. And she was also giving me some guidance. But I felt very lost. I really didn't know where to begin. And the first 2 weeks, I didn't accomplish anything tangible at all. I was mostly just feeling anxiety. And I would look at the training stuff and the templates I had and all the things. I go, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do. And after a couple weeks, I thought, you know, Urmila, Krishna's given you an incredible amount of freedom here. You don't have to pay any money for anything. You have your own little house-ish. House-ish. Your own little unit. You have prasadam. No one's breathing down your neck. No one's asking you to do anything. I thought if you don't use this freedom to actually produce something, Krishna's going to take it away. He's giving you this freedom for a purpose. You need to fulfill that purpose. Don't take this for granted. I was thinking, I never had that much freedom in my whole life. Let me use it properly. So even though it was very difficult and it was all prayer, it was just all prayer. It was just like, help me, help me, help me. Somehow we were able to do it, and eventually Krishna sent so much other help, so many other devotees. At first it was just me and my computer. Eventually 200 people worked on this over 3 years. and we produced a world-class curriculum. But my realization was that whatever freedom Krishna has given us, we need to use that properly. How do we use what time we have at our disposal? How do we use the energy at our disposal? How do we use our human life? You know, we celebrate birthdays, and I've thought, why do we celebrate birthdays? I thought because it's so glorious to have a human birth. We're saying how wonderful it is that you have this human birth. And then the point is, how are we using it? And to whatever extent we gain the Lord's trust through how we use it, to that extent, He will restore to us our original position of, practically speaking, absolute freedom. Prabhupada says we have freedom, what does he say? Freedom on the level of the Lord, right? In that purport? He said we can just imagine the extent and unlimitedness of His freedom, which is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. So that's our natural situation. That's our inherent nature. So that is our main question to ask. With the freedom of the Lord, because He's watching. Just like we would do with anyone if we were employing them. We would see, okay, I give you some freedom. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? How are we going to use our own desires? How are we going to use our own volition in our own personal advancement and in the Lord's service? So, thank you very much. Anything good in this class is by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, Sukadeva Goswami, and Kardama Muni, and Srila Sanatana Goswami. And anything bad in this class is my responsibility. So I hope you can take up the good and forgive the bad and put it aside. Does anyone have any questions, comments, additions, subtractions, corrections, chastisements? Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful class. I just have one short comment and one question.
Okay.
So from your story of how you stayed in develop curriculum and how you got lots of freedom, that made me. Just one quote came to my mind. So more freedom means more responsibility.
Yes.
That just came, and the question is that you kind of addressed it already by saying. Like how being harmony with Krishna's plan and align ourselves to Krishna and have same interest as Krishna. But
yes.
I just like to know more than how we gain trust of Krishna. Can you elaborate a little more?
If I'm using whatever He's already given me, He's watching. How are we using what He's given us? How are we using the things He's given us? How are we using our talents? How are we using our intelligence? How are we using money? How are we using time? Are we using that in a way that's in accord with His interest? And His interests are very broad. Prabhupada says Krishna is not narrow or stereotyped. What's Krishna's interest? It's a very simple question. What's His interest? Love. Krishna wants all living entities to regain their natural spiritual love. I sometimes say we're employees in Krishna's company and our product is love of God. Our product is Krishna Prema. So are we using our time, our energy, our talents, our natures, our things, our money, are we using that to promote love of God? Are we using it to help ourselves love God? And are we using it to help other people love God? That's a oneness of interest. Now how we do that, there's trillions and trillions and trillions of ways to do that. Yudhisthira was running a kingdom to help people love God. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was being a magistrate to help people love God. Prabhupada was running a chain of pharmacies to help people love God. Kolovich Sridhar was making cups out of banana leaves and selling them to help people love God. As many ways as there are people with their individual talents and natures and inclinations. But am I using what I have also? I mean, we're talking about varnashram. If I'm doing someone else's duty, which Krishna says not to do, then that means I'm not using what Krishna has given me in his service. Whatever my nature is, I need to use that for Krishna. Not let it wither away and die. Prabhupada said, everyone has some extraordinary talent, and to serve Krishna with our talent means successful life. Is that all right? So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai.